Welcome to the Unleashed Life, where ambitious women take control of their mindset, money, and mastery. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Baker. Let's get unleashed. Welcome back to the Unleashed Life, the podcast for bold thinkers, visionary leaders, and everyday people who are ready to stop performing and start truly living. Today's guest is a force in finance, a builder in tech, and a healer in wellness. Candice Bradley. She is not just breaking barriers. She's rebuilding the systems that created them in the first place. From Harvard to high finance, from launching inclusive investment platforms to opening her own wellness studio in Tampa, Candice's journey is a masterclass in how to pivot from purpose to power. And she's also the founder and CEO of Seneca Village, a company making it possible for communities, especially those that are overlooked, to build wealth together. We're going to talk about money, mindset, and the mastery it takes to live a life fully aligned with courage, clarity, and confidence. This is going to be a conversation rich in gems. I'm just going to make that promise right now.
I'm so excited, right?
We're about to shift the way people think about ownership, access, and unapologetic abundance. Hello, Candice Bradley.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to chat with you today.
I am so happy that we were able to make this work with your busy schedule. But you are, just someone that I admire just for so many reasons, for all that you do, but you are making it happen. So I just want to just start out not with the question, who are you, what do we do, because we're going to find out along the way. But you've worked across finance, tech, you've done these tech startups and wellness, and those might feel like three different arenas. But I know that there's a common thread that connects your journey. So let's hear about it, because I just love how multidimensional your path is. And so many people always feel pressured to stay in one lane.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't necessarily set out for it to be an unconventional path. It started very conventionally, but I think over time, I've just learned to listen to myself and really understand the intuition and what I felt like I was being pulled to do, and kind of just accepting that and moving with it. And so I think the common thread is just that I wanted to have experiences that were deeply challenging, that were fun, and I wanted to be and impact a group of people who also were fun and challenging, and we could kind of push the envelope. And so finance was very much that. Tech startups was no shortage of that, right? Starting from the beginning and building the company from scratch. We all know is quite a feat. And, wellness is that. And I think wellness, and I know we'll talk about this, but wellness kind of fits in for me because it's such a fundamental piece of how we live our day-to-day lives. And I think oftentimes we don't incorporate it the way that we should. And our body kind of feels that. And it tries to tell us, but you got to listen.
So see, you had me you're taking us on this journey, and then you just dropped the first gem.
Yeah.
Your body is going to tell you what you need, but you have to listen.
You have to listen.
And I've said previously, your body whispers before it starts to scream.
Before it screams. Exactly.
And then it's screaming. And then sometimes people screaming like, what? What's that? So you have figured out, or maybe you're in a process of working in creating this level of alignment, from being in the boardrooms to reforming how we build wealth to the startups and even to self-care. So you're showing us that, we can create our version of success. And it's not just what we do, it's also how you listen to the call and have the courage to follow it.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big piece of it, honestly. And I'm so glad you phrased it that way. We all kind of have this prototypical view, right, of what we think success is. And it's been built over time for us. There's been, kind of nudges along the way in our childhood and when we were in college, or, whatever that kind of early adulthood scenario looked like. And then at some point you face it and you say, but is this what I actually want to do? Or is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And for me, it was very much this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like this is what people who've done the things that I have done up to this point do. And stepping away from that is hard,
Yeah.
or can be hard. It was hard for me. But you got to have courage. It takes courage to do that.
Listen, I know a little something about courage, and leaving comfort for a calling it's not easy. And
No.
it takes, like you said, it takes a lot of courage to leave. You could still love what you were doing and still feel called to do something else and have that
Exactly.
experience. But
Exactly.
it's not easy to make that pivot. So what gave you the courage to make the pivot?
Hmm.
What was it? One moment, a breakdown, a breakthrough, or all the above, or something else?
Yeah, no, so this was me listening to my body, honestly. So
Yeah,
for me, it came through, I loved, and to your point, I didn't not enjoy. I enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed
nice.
the impact that I was having, but I kind of woke up, so to speak, at one moment and I was tired. I would even go so far as to say I was exhausted. And I realized that there were pieces of my professional life that were absolutely what I had imagined, again, based on that definition of success. But I wasn't taking care of myself, and that manifested for me from my body in Graves' disease, which I had, but I would have these flare ups,
Right.
and they were massive and overpowering. And learning to deal with those flare ups kind of forced me to say, okay, what am I doing on a day to day basis that's contributing to me having flare ups in the first place? and,
Yeah.
and how can I overcome that from a well perspective, because I didn't want to take medication every day. And so it was kind of putting all these pieces together. But you're right, I wasn't inherently unhappy. I enjoyed what I was doing day to day. But there were, if you think about, I've even learned to think about this from a portfolio perspective. If you think about
Mhm.
all the pieces of the pie, the work piece, which is a large piece, career piece, which is a large piece, was mostly satisfied. I felt a calling to do something different, but mostly satisfied. But the other pieces were out of whack. And
That's right.
so it was kind of listening to my body with the other pieces.
Well, I mean, that's a big part, right? It's hard for people to wrap, I find in my experience at least, that it's been hard for people to wrap around how when your pie is out of whack, that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to
like the pieces
create.
pulling away.
Right. It's like, and there's so many people who just live with it. But
Hmm.
thank you for sharing your story and for your transparency, because it's a lived truth, and people have to learn that sometimes the pivot isn't just about moving the career or leaving behind what doesn't work. Sometimes it's just reclaiming your wellness, your voice, yourself, because need to be healthy. Success is also about being healthy, and if it's not worth it,
Exactly.
if your body is breaking down and you're still trying to survive,
Hmm.
but act as if you're thriving.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and we've talked about this, but there's
Mhm.
that facade of what it means to be thriving, right? And how vulnerable can I be when I'm not thriving? Can I be out loud saying that I should probably, kind of take FMLA and take a break?
Right.
Do you feel that that's acceptable out loud? And for a lot of people, they push through.
That's right. Right. And I mean, that's a really good point as well, because we we both we're in finance. That's not the most vulnerable place. Like, that's not the place to be the most vulnerable, right? Like,
No.
I mean, they might say, "Oh, I hope you feel better," but judging, you're not going
Right,
anywhere. Like,
right, right, right.
yeah. I mean, I've personally been in situations where I was very sick and on a stage, or I remember needing to go to the hospital and not wanting to tell anyone that it was in a hospital. And I was on a conference call and someone heard the beeping. And it's not like what they're seeing on TikTok with the microwave. Like, I legit was in a hospital. I had to get surgery, and
Right.
the doctors put the band around my arm, and I said, "Well, I have a conference to go to. I need to go to this conference. If as long as I'm not going to die, I'll be back." And I used my
Right.
jacket to cover
To
it.
cover.
I had to tell the leaders that I was working with that I was going to be out for a while because of this, and
Hmm.
that did not feel good to me,
Hmm.
because we want to. I don't know, I'm not going to speak for us, but I know in my experience, it's just you push through, you
You
keep
push through.
going, and success looks like pushing through and not giving up.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
how's that changed?
yeah. So I think it's changed dramatically, and I have similar stories. I even remember I was in labor with my fourth baby, and I had because I worked up until the day that she was
Mhm.
born, and I was interviewing someone for a position on my team. I was having contractions. Finished my interview and went to the hospital. So that's that quiet kind of sense of you can't take a step back is so real. But to your question, when you take the step back, you realize how ridiculous, or
Oh
not even
yeah.
ridiculous, how much pressure, right, you were kind of placing on yourself. You realize, and now it's been for me a little over 2 years of full time entrepreneurship. And man, do I just have a completely different outlook. Do I have completely different perspectives and priorities? And I'm not saying that, I spend half of my day being well to myself, right? I'm clearly still working, but I have prioritized, okay, so I am actually going to work out, right? It's going to happen. Or I am actually going to pick my kids up from school, not have a phone, and we hang out for an hour, or, whatever. You can make these very intentional moves when you kind of take a step back and realize the severity of the choices you have been making.
Yes, that's real, and it's just being able to recognize that one, we need to be present. We're never going to get those moments back. Before I left corporate, my grandmother said to me before she passed away that you can get another title, but you don't get more time. Like, you need to do what it is that you need to do. We can't keep going. You're never going to get this time back, especially with
Never.
whether it's with your children. We don't get another version. We can't schedule life on our calendar because it's also happening while we're still working. And we get to a point where we wake up and we realize that our choices are really shaping our peace, our body, and our energies. And we can't keep choosing
Yes.
everyone else and expecting our lives to just kind of magically work
Fall
out.
into place.
Right. And now that you have been, this journey as a full time entrepreneur, just carving out space for
Mhm.
yourself is important. So let's talk about your work, because
Yeah,
you're doing some really
it's
interesting work,
exciting to me.
and you love it. Look how you light up. Like,
I
you
do. I'm
love
like,
it.
let's
You
talk about
do.
it.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. You're tackling the wealth gap in a tangible way, but let's talk about your work. Why don't you share something about all the amazing things that you're doing right now?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. It's been a journey, and I am definitely one of those entrepreneurs, or even just people, not necessarily even identifying as an entrepreneur, who I have a ton of ideas, Renee. So
Right.
my husband's always like, Candice, pick one and go with it. Like, but I can't. So again, back to that portfolio. For me, that career slice kind of comes in a few different slices, and I don't know how to make it one, but there are things that I feel, to your point, really called to. So one is kind of wellness oriented. And I mentioned that came about for me because of my own journey with Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease that impacts the thyroid. So essentially, I have an overactive thyroid. And so it's hard for me to gain weight at different points in
Mhm.
time. It's hard for me to slow my heart rate at different points in time. And even at one point, I couldn't even work out because my heart rate would get so high that it was beyond, kind of the thresholds of what was acceptable for working out. So I couldn't even work out. And so the journey around that for me has been kind of pieces of fitness, and Pilates is that's why Pilates is part of the wellness kind of portfolio, because Pilates was the one thing that I could do that wouldn't raise my heart rate incredibly, but I could still have strength training and, kind of really work on the micro muscles and kind of improvement in that. So fitness was one piece. Nutrition was a big piece as well. And it's funny, like I grew up with my certain type of foods, right? Like I like my fried chicken and I like my macaroni and cheese, but those are not things that serve my body,
Right.
unfortunately. And so learning to, kind of find the foods that will nurture me in the way that my body needs, and also allows me to have my guilty pleasures, in the way that I need in moderation, was kind of a process. And so we've incorporated kind of nutritional training as well in some of the work that we do from a wellness perspective. And then lastly, incorporated restorative or recovery type practices. And these were huge for me with autoimmune disease. As you may know, you have a fair amount of inflammation. And so inflammation reducing activities were things that I was looking for. And so kind of finding modalities such as red light and infrared salt sauna. I mean, it's amazing. The salt
Amazing.
kind of impact is so amazing for your body. But finding those, kind of types of activities that could help in the wellness journey with reducing inflammation were a huge focus for me as well. And so the Wellness Center was really kind of around putting that all together in a way that other people could serve for themselves, right? And kind of have access to those products and those services in the way that could impact their bodies as well. So that's the wellness piece.
Yes.
And then from the wealth gap piece, along the way of this journey, it really kind of started, honestly, because my husband and I were launching one of our businesses, and we had a couple family members, friends and family members kind of reach out to us and say, we'd really, we're not going to start businesses ourselves, but we'd really love to be a part of what you're doing. We really, one, kind of believe in the mission, but two, kind of believe in the promise of scale around what you're doing. And so let us be investors with you. And so that kind of triggered for me, there's so many ways, or so many opportunities, I should say, for communities to invest together and kind of share in that wealth building. Now, it's not a liquid product, right? It's a long-term, so it's a piece of a portfolio, not the portfolio.
Yeah.
But doing that together and having community support behind your businesses is so huge. And not to mention, they can obviously take part in the activities. And so you're kind of doing the same kind of having a cyclical kind of process of where the folks who are most ingrained in your community happen to be the folks who benefit from your community doing well as well.
I love that. I mean, I truly, as a woman after my own heart, like you, yes, we have a lot of ideas. We can't execute on all of them, but you execute on the things that are important. And some of it's personal, right? Like you talk about your wellness business, and your body asked for it. And it also was another way that you could, not only are you healing and working with yourself, but you're helping others along the way. And then if you're talking about your different portfolio, we're in finance. We always talk about diversification, multiple streams of income, right? So you're helping people also build systems that could serve them on different levels, so to speak. And I always say, you're helping them continue. You might not be the person, but that you can be an investor, right?
Exactly.
And I love the fact that you are doing it and you're intertwining it and focusing on community and building as you're building other people as you also build, which is also important. And why pick one lane when you are the lane, Candice Bradley? You are the lane.
Exactly. You become your lane. Become your lane.
Yeah. And that way you get to connect all the different pieces. But one of the things that you talk about that is a really interesting to me, particularly when we talk about this whole idea around unleashed life, is the myth about wealth building. Right. Yes. Especially in underrepresented communities. We're always hearing money is not for us, or we need to budget better, or there's so much opportunity out here.
The rainy day.
Yeah, like that. Those are all the things that we hear as if that's the full picture. But what has been your experience, and what do you wish that people understood more about building wealth from where they're starting, and not kind of hearing all the noise that surrounds it?
Yeah. So I think it's a few different pieces to the mindset, if you will. I think one of them is that, frankly, you just deserve it. It's not, kind of reserved for a special group of people who are kind of over on that pedestal. It's really, there's more than enough money and opportunity in the world for us all. Right. And so there's just some level of, you just deserve it, and you're not taking away from somebody else to get it. You're just creating new opportunities in the way that allows it to circulate for the benefit of everyone. And so that's one. And then two, I think that in a lot of, kind of my conversations, it ends up being, the best opportunities are for those who already have money. And that's kind of how they perpetuate their cycle. And so you mentioned kind of changing the system. Like that's kind of my intent, and frankly what it, like at the end of the day, what I want to be known for is kind of changing the system around that to where the best opportunities are not reserved for those who already have amassed a certain amount of wealth, but yet we all get to share in them. And it's hard. It's hard from there's so many legal and risk nuances that make it
Mhm.
incredibly hard for the quote unquote non-accredited investors to be included. But see a path, and it's maybe a longer one, but that doesn't matter because it's a mission. See a path to average individual can invest $500 XYZ investment, and similarly to how the accredited investor can invest 100,000 in that investment, and you can kind of pull
Mhm.
them together and make it worthwhile for people to start. And like if you can start at those small increments, then over time we both know that accumulates, and
That
that
can,
that gets people where they need to be.
and that is the one thing is just we say it all the time, like just start somewhere. And
Yes.
oftentimes there's so much you talked about the legal aspects of it, you talk about all the reasons that maybe someone could not necessarily invest,
Hmm.
but also there's also some mindset shifts that we're working through as well. But I love that you said we deserve it, full stop. Like you deserve it, not because you earned it by overworking for someone else, not because someone gave it to you, not because opportunity is only for the privileged, is a possibility for everyone. And you're redefining what access looks like.
That is my entire goal. If
Yeah.
if I can accomplish that by the time I'm 100 and it's my time, then that would be amazing to me.
Yeah. And I think the approach that you're taking and seeing it as shared path, right? We're
Mhm.
working on walking this shared path. And even when we don't know, there's somebody next to you that does know, right? Like just learn together and creating an intentional, I don't know if you're calling it community, but it feels like an intentional shared wealth building community where the best opportunities aren't gated.
Absolutely. And I do think about, I think even like if we think about our own entrepreneurial paths,
Mhm.
you don't know what you don't know when you start. So it's
That's
no
right.
different than having a baby or getting married or buying a home for the first time. Until you actually do it, you have no clue what you are embarking on. And so I think about, kind of investing from that same standpoint, particularly if you haven't been doing it up to this point. And what has helped me from an entrepreneurial perspective has been those relationships. So you and I will go have lunch and we'll say like we can download and say like, what would you do
Mhm.
if this was happening to you? Right. And
Right.
so having those connections and having those touch points as you are along in the journey, as you are learning to diligence companies, as you learn what cash flow means, as you learn what is it like to be an investor in an SPV? What is as you
Mhm.
are kind of having those conversations, I think the more that you can rely on um, asking a group of people and kind of crowd sharing knowledge, the better off we all are.
Yeah, and when you came up with this idea, right, and knowing that the idea of being an entrepreneur is very different than being an entrepreneur, actually doing the work
Yeah.
is very different. And you, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. How do you navigate that for someone that's listening, right? Like we've been on this journey, we are learning as we build, we're building the plane as we're flying it in some cases. But what advice would you have to someone who doesn't know and who's also navigating or trying to figure it out?
Yeah. So I think it just honestly starts with, and this is something that someone shared to me, like kind of before I started into the entrepreneurial journey.
Mhm.
Pick something you want to know. So something that you want to know about investing, something that you want to be an expert in. And you can literally spend 15 minutes a day learning about that topic. There's so many ebooks, there's so many courses, there's so many, there's just so many sources of information that you can
Mhm.
kind of pick 15 minutes, different people, different perspectives, different topics, And, if you add that up over the course of the year, think about how much time then you've spent to become an expert in that topic. If real estate is your jam and you're like, I really want to know about single family rentals and within real estate, and I want to be an investor there. 15 minutes a day. Go read something about cash flow. Go read something about property management. Go read something about mortgages and how you get a mortgage on that type of a property. And then you just amass that knowledge. And so it doesn't have to be big. It's small chunks.
Yeah, I think people forget that we kind of build like in small increments, and that 15 minutes that you could spend scrolling TikTok, if you're not focused on if you're just doing messy talk, like sometimes I do,
Right,
but
right.
if you're
You have to.
focused, you can have a little fun. Like you got to kind of get focused here. But if you just go and you're looking up the information from a reliable source, we can build that knowledge. It really doesn't take too much, right? And you talk about how we could build from that just by
Mhm.
taking the step.
Just taking the nuggets. Yep. Taking the nuggets and putting the nuggets together. I mean, so much of what we're working on has been more small business oriented,
Mhm.
but that's the same kind of concept, right? You learn about SBA loans, you learn about, leverage, you learn about cash flow within a company, you learn how to value a company, and you can do that, in small chunks every day. And then all of a sudden, you're in a community with folks and they're like, hey, I'm going to go invest in X. Would you like to invest alongside me? You know how to evaluate those types of opportunities.
So this is really helpful because earlier in our conversation, you were talking about SPV. People might not know that SPV, we're talking about special purpose vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you tell someone who, is thinking about, okay, maybe they're not going to put together the SPV because it's a legal
Mm-hmm.
entity. It's got a lot of different types of parts to it and financial risk and
It's
things. What
nuances.
would you say is there's different nuances but it's a temporary, would you say that it's a like a temporary, like an investment container, like how
It's
would you define it?
I would say it's definitely contained.
Right.
And so essentially an SPV oftentimes, I mean, they can be used for so many purposes, right? But for the purposes of what we're chatting about, it can essentially be almost a kind of side vehicle, right, for investing. So you don't have to your point, you don't need to be the primary investor, the lead investor, anything like that. But there's an opportunity has, been presented to you. And so you essentially join in with a group of people, you kind of create your own, not you yourself, but it is created for you to have another kind of legal entity, an LLC, and you each kind of contribute to that LLC to pull your funds together to kind of reach the minimums that are then needed to invest in the larger kind of assets. In the case of, even as simple as, maybe not as simple, but even as specific as venture capital, you can have an
Mhm.
SPV that is operating alongside the main investors, if you will, and you all together can create a vehicle that then invests in that company. Right. And then that's kind of how you get around the minimums.
And that's what's, I think people don't realize that's, let's say you're finding you have this tech startup, and sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to throw out a number, like I need to have the $250,000 like as
Mm-hmm.
myself. But
Mm-hmm.
with the SPV, basically everybody can invest separately. You
Mm-hmm.
pull the funds, and then as the SPV, as the single investor, then you can go
Then you're on
and
the cap
make
table.
the investment, right? And then now are pulling your investment. Then you benefit. Everyone shares, right?
Everyone
Across the
shares
board.
at that
Days,
point.
you win or you lose. We're in it
You
together.
win it together.
Yeah.
Exactly. You win or you lose together. And it definitely gets complicated. Like we talked about, there's some nuances around accredited investors and like, do you meet those thresholds and things like that? And I've been having lots of really, really good and interesting, very promising conversations with some attorneys around, can you have non-accredited investors, right? So that was what I was saying. My long-term vision
Mhm.
is you'll be able to invest at lower minimums. But how do you pull together those lower minimums to get to that amount? And so there's a ways to go there, but is what I see the future.
Yeah, because it's to be an accredited investor. What is it? Is it annual income of 200,000 or
250.
more?
Yeah, exactly.
250.
Yeah.
And
Or
then what
an
is the net worth?
exactly, net worth minimums. I mean, there are, and it's that way. That's
Mm-hmm.
not to disparage, kind of the process around
Anyone,
that, because
right,
these are risky investments, right? And
right,
so
right.
we want to make sure that people aren't over indexing and then, specifically allocating what they otherwise need or that they can't afford to lose, so to speak. So that there's a reason for sure that that process is in place the way it is, and we respect the process for that. But there's
Right.
also some level of risk that can be taken by an individual who doesn't quite meet those minimums or doesn't quite have that annual income in order to still have access to those opportunities.
And that's a way to help to, I mean, these are type of situations that kind of expand the wealth gap, because if you already don't have wealth, then you might not have access to the tools
Had
to
it.
even to build more wealth. So,
Exactly.
what you're doing is helping with that shift
Hmm.
and doing your part to kind of, I'm saying level the playing field, for lack of a
Hmm.
better phrase,
Hmm.
but
I think that's a good one.
that's your
Mhm.
goal here.
That's the goal.
So let's pivot, because you've held high level roles in corporate, and you've chosen to be out here in these entrepreneurial
Entrepreneurial street.
streets, helping people, make a shift and build wealth.
Yeah.
What? I mean, okay, I'm going to step back for a moment, because we talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
What is the mindset shift? Because sometimes it's not even the quitting of the job, it's the shifting of the mindset. Because when you
Yeah.
go from executive to entrepreneur, you
Yeah.
have to. That was the biggest thing for me to learn. Like, how do you go
There's
from
some humbling there.
executing? Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
humbling, please, humbled. You're executing someone else's vision to fully your own, and you have their name and capital. But what would you
Right.
say was what did you have to do to get that mindset, and how do you keep
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. So I will say that, so a couple things. One, we talked about it earlier, but it's so true here as well. It's just that definition of success. Like, you cannot maintain your prior definition of success and persevere the way that you need to in an entrepreneurial setting day to day. Because what I think my biggest aha, I was actually just, kind of writing these down so that I could make sure that I cement them for me. But one of my biggest ahas from entrepreneurship is essentially, you can have the best laid out plans, which is what I had as an executive, right? So we met as a team, we, cross functionally collaborated, we made the strategery all work, and we then had the capital to put the team together to execute it, and we could pilot for a longer period of time because capital was not unlimited, but it felt unlimited. And going from that to, okay, I have a plan, and I have, there's some operational risk, there's some execution risk, but I can pilot in small chunks. Going
Mhm.
from that to, like, I did everything my plan said and it still didn't work. Now
Right.
what? Like, that is a completely different mindset. I think, and I'm sure you've had them too. I've had days where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to get myself a job, and that is going to be easier, and I should just go do it. But then I have, a conversation, or I meet a client, or, whatever the case may be. And you're like, that's why I'm doing this. And that's the impact that I'm having. So that muscle around the definition, and then literal perseverance. Like, I can't even describe it. I think people say this all the time of how you just can't give
Mhm.
up, but you literally cannot give up, because everything will not work. And even for
No.
the smartest people, I consider myself a smart person. And I'm like,
Yes,
that
you
did
are
not work.
brilliant. Yes, that sums it up. Entrepreneurship, that did not
Right?
work. Like,
That did not work.
the best. I was like, what the what's this the song? The road to hell is paved with good intentions, but
But
you
maybe
get everything
exactly.
that you're supposed to do. You think, because we've had this, what success looks like is so regimented in corporate,
Exactly.
and
Well, and it's like straight, right? Like, it,
yes, yes.
it
You
doesn't
know
go
what
like
you need
that.
to
Yeah,
do.
right.
For the
Right.
most part, you're like, you got it. But this space doesn't have a formula.
Mm-mm.
You can, and even if you have a nice that.
Yeah.
In corporate, you
Right.
can have a nice day, can
You
get
can have a
away,
nice
but
day and people, yeah.
you're humbled by the process. In corporate, I say we were built for certainty, right? You have the different departments, you have your budgets, you have your timelines. In entrepreneurship, we are building possibility
Exactly. Vision.
and vision and
Right.
hope. And we
Yeah.
launched, I had to give up my whole idea of like perfection, right? I wanted everything to look good and
Mhm.
holding it all together. And then, you know what?
Mm.
Life, it just happens. I'm pivoting constantly
Constant.
and I'm doing some things. And like some corporate folks that know me are like, well, what? I'm like, listen,
I
different
know.
game over here. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
can't.
This is what we have to do here.
I am taping this up. Like,
Right. Right.
because the only thing that's holding it together is my why, right? Like this is
Right.
like
Right. Right. That's so true.
because sometimes you want to like, you know what? Let me dust off this resume.
Right. Let me
I'm
just
like,
see.
I can get another title.
It's so
Which
true.
is
And I think we have to be real about that because
it's
as I like
real.
this is the community, kind of piece of it. Because between LinkedIn and like everything else, social related, everybody else seems to be up and to the right. And I'm like, what? Is it just me?
Nope.
Does it just not work for me? I don't I'm like, that's not how it's actually working.
No, you're right. And sometimes we have to be more. I said, even for me, I have to be more like I'll have the conversations. I'm like, this is not working, or I'll just take a moment and even over this morning, I was like, okay. I walk when I get stressed.
Yep,
Everybody's like,
me
"Oh, you're
too.
so thin." Yeah, because I'm stressed
Because
and
I'm
I'm
always
walking.
walking. Always walking.
I'm walking, stressed, trying to figure things out. But picking up the phone and asking and having conversations. And I also had to unlearn some of the things, but also never say unlearn, but also the person I'm becoming. I'm so glad that I have embarked on this. Now I wish I think every corporate person should go through this journey
I
because
agree.
whether you stay in entrepreneurship, if you go back, your perspective changes. My
Just
perspective has
completely different.
shifted. I thought I was grown before. I'm grown.
Yeah, right, right. I've gone back to toddlerhood and
Yeah,
now I'm coming back.
but it's a real thing.
Yeah. It's so true. I think even I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, but the first business that my husband and I launched went incredibly well. We grew from 0 to 10 million in revenue in 2 years. So we were that, like, oh, look, everything's up and to the right.
Yeah,
And then we had a customer with a seven-figure invoice go bankrupt. And we're like, what do we do now? What happened? No, that
hair,
wasn't in my
cigarette.
roadmap. Right?
Yes.
That was not in my roadmap. And tape, like how do we glue this all back together so we can keep going? Because at that point you have, not just our personal responsibilities, we have our family and our kids, but we have employees and
Employees,
we
I was
have,
gonna say
there's other
employees and
stakeholders.
vendors and partners.
Exactly. So what do you do? And nobody teaches you that in corporate, or at least you don't feel it the same way in corporate.
No, you don't. And although when no one talks about when your plan falls apart and you are moving along, and that's why I don't like to talk about like success as what you see because
Mhm.
it could change in a moment. I could have a great day today, and then
Exactly.
tomorrow it'll be something else.
Yes. Yes.
And no one puts that's not going to be in the pitch deck, or we
No.
need to be more real about that. But how do
Yeah.
you emerge from that?
Yeah.
Because sometimes success also looks like subtracting and knowing when you need to let go of what no longer serves
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
So,
It's
and that what did
seasonal.
you have to go through? Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is seasonal. And the pivoting, I think, a large part of pivoting, at least for me, from like a tech startup perspective, we
Right.
pivoted a lot. So I did have some muscle for pivoting, but I did not have muscle for walking away. And knowing the point of walk away, it's a highly, highly personal and difficult, I think, decision to make.
Yeah.
And no
I
one
find that that's
really,
harder than making a decision to walk away from corporate because it's
I
kind of
agree.
like you built it, right? And
I agree.
it's hard, like, to say, okay, what do I walk away from? And then to people who are not on the journey, because sometimes failure is not failure, it's wisdom. It's
No, exactly.
evolving, it's evolution. And we put our emotional capital into the the businesses, but I always say this can't be my baby because I have to be able to know when I
Right.
have to let it go. If it's my
Right.
baby, I'm not gonna want to let it
You
go.
don't let it go. And I think that as such, it's another like great lesson from entrepreneurship, which frankly I would have maybe been okay not learning, but I learned.
Yeah. It's like some lessons I don't need to learn.
I
I'm
just don't
good.
want to learn them. I don't want them. But that was one. And it's like, you're right. It cannot be my baby because then I emotionally tie and identify with it.
Yes.
And then there is a point, I have this mentor who I talk to him once a month. He is one of my absolute favorite humans. And he said to me, so I was having this conversation with him, and he said to me, have you reached the point of irrationality? I think I have. He's like, are your decisions now irrational?
That's a truth bomb. We need people in our
Mm-hmm.
lives that
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna help us wake up, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like a gut check.
Mm-hmm.
So how
Yeah.
do you respond to that?
Well, it's like, why would you ask me
That's a tough
that?
question. That's a tough question.
But it was true because I think again there's a pivot and there's a time and
Mhm.
a space for pivoting and reinvention. That's my new term that I love. It's just like
Love
I'm
that.
reinventing.
Yes.
There is a point where your reinvention becomes desperation, which then is leading to irrationality. And I think it's a highly, and which is why I don't think he told me necessarily that I was being irrational, because it is a highly personal decision. But I think in your gut. So
You
for
know.
me, I kind of walked away from that conversation with, okay, what is the hard decision, or what are the decision trees of
Mhm.
hard decisions, and which of these do I think I should make, but I just don't want to make. And if
Right.
I had one, then I had reached a point of irrationality, and I pulled back.
Because you know when you know, but you didn't want anybody to bring it
I don't
up,
want to
and it
know.
just hits you, and you're
Yeah,
like, now I have to
yeah.
face
Now I have to do
who I'm
something about
becoming.
it.
But
Exactly.
sometimes it's, we're on this journey, and is it rooted, like you said, reinvention? I've asked myself, is it rooted in the woman that I'm becoming? Is it
Yes.
rooted? Is it aligned to me? And I never thought about alignment. I thought about everything like, okay, this is my to-do list. I didn't have a
Hmm.
to-be list. I didn't have a wanna-be
Yes.
list. It
Yes.
was, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to achieve. I had my goals, and they were rooted in very strict ways. But
Hmm.
wisdom sometimes isn't always logical. And our ability to be able to become who we're becoming as we navigate these moments in this process is critical.
Hmm. It's critical.
So
It's
you can
critical.
walk
And
away.
yeah, and you can walk away. And I think a lot of times too, that's what pushes us past. I love the to be list, because that's what
Mhm.
pushes us past that point of your comfort zone, right? And but like
Yeah.
some things you aren't meant to push past. It's just again irrational. But then there's the other things that would the person I'm becoming do this,
Right.
or would she walk away?
But she walk away. And I got
Mhm.
that to be list from Natalie Pierre. She came up with that.
I
So
love
shout out
that.
to her because that's
Yes.
an amazing thing to know.
Hmm.
Like, what's your to be list,
Hmm.
and for yourself. But we
Hmm.
also grew up in a world where achievement is winning, and winning doesn't look like walking away, and
It
it could
does.
be seems like it's a failure.
It seems.
That is the thing too, to embrace that is not failure when it's growth. Like, it's not failure when it doesn't follow the path anymore. So that
Hmm.
is another pivot, because you're like, I failed, but no, you didn't fail. Like, so how have you had those moments where you're
Oh yeah.
feeling that way?
Oh yeah. So and I think I sat with them for much longer than maybe I needed
Mhm.
to, and
Mhm.
felt even honestly to some level shame and guilt around
Mhm.
it, because again from an identity perspective I do identify with myself as someone who makes great decisions, right?
Right.
And who is intelligent and who is a great capital allocator and who kind of does these things. And so when something that was well laid out and planned doesn't work, you try again, it still doesn't work. Maybe you try it a third time in a different way and it still doesn't work. It feels like, why can't I get it right?
Right.
And that for me was a huge learning curve of. And so what I did, and I don't know if on your journey you've done this as well, but what I did was start reading. So back to the community piece, I think there's
Hmm.
definitely just having conversations with people, and you learn that you're literally not the only person
Not the only
who
one. No.
does not. And so that helped me to just know that I wasn't a camp of one. But I think the other piece, I read this article, and I think it was Fawn Weaver, who at
Hmm.
some point had her account for Uncle Nearest was negatively drawn by, I think it was 1.4 million. I don't know why that number stuck out in my mind. It was 1.4 million. And so she said that she realized that this was an opportunity for herself to either, kind of shut it down, walk away kind of deal, or to make a change. So what she said to herself, which is something that one of my mantras that I kind of repeat to myself, was, I was built for this. I was
Mm.
built for this challenge. Like, this is a challenge that I was built for. And so let
Hmm.
me logically think through how I would solve it. And so instead of failure, so you find yourself facing situations that frankly you don't want to be in,
Right.
right?
Right.
But is this a situation I was built for? And if yes, and there's some reasonable path to getting through the situation where it's not irrational, then I should keep pushing.
That's right.
But if not, and there is no rational path, I should stop pushing. So it's
Hmm.
kind of, I was built for this. Okay, Candice, we were built for this. Let's go.
I love that. I love that. So I was built for this. And that is
Mhm.
when you say it, it's like, okay, if I'm built for it, this is not ego. Ego, this is not ego. This is, am I built for this? Am I resilient enough to see this through? And it's your
Mhm.
own decision tree of whether or not
Exactly.
this is the path of a calling or chaos. Where are we
Hmm.
going? Sometimes
Hmm.
the calling is chaos, but it's okay. We go through a little bit of turbulence before we land the plane.
Meantime.
But I appreciate you sharing that because also not only is it affirming as as an entrepreneur who kind of is going through it, but it's also permission to know that it's okay, right? You're not the only person, and there may be people out there who this conversation might frighten them and say, "Oh, I can't," or other people who are going through it who say, "You know what? I'm going through that too, and I am built for this." But we
Hmm.
get to choose. The one thing that I appreciate is that we are using our free will. We have
Hmm.
chosen this path.
Hmm.
We have made the decision. And even if you or I or anyone listening decides that this is no longer your path, you actually just get to choose. And I hear all the
And that's
things,
okay.
and that is okay.
Hmm.
And it's because it does take a lot of courage to build something. It does take a lot of courage to release something. And it does
Exactly.
take a lot of courage to kind of go back into waters that you might have thought that you would never go back to, but you actually don't go back the same because you are
No.
so much different. I know I am.
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, and yeah, we've talked about this. There's so many flavors. Another thing that I've learned to kind of to challenge from a mindset perspective. There's so many flavors of entrepreneurship.
Right.
There's, obviously there's full-time entrepreneurship, and that's one, but there's side hustle is not the word that I would use, but there is work alongside a job, and that
Yep.
is okay. That's
Yep.
not a lesser or an inferior entrepreneurial path. And so I think people just have to. I think there's so many stories again from a social perspective of like I was down to my last $500, and as I had to sell my things, and it's like, but you don't have to live meagerly, right, to be an
Right.
entrepreneur.
Yeah.
There there
Right.
there are
Right.
paths. There are
Right.
paths.
There are facts.
You don't
We're
have to
not
do that.
saying get down there. Yeah.
No,
You have
don't
to
do
go
that.
back to oodles of noodles.
Right, right. No ramen. You don't have to be a
We
ramen
don't have
coach.
to do that, right? We can. There's ways, but and there, and there's you can be an investor and still have your business. There are different things that you can
Exactly.
do.
Exactly.
But, there's a woman out there, there's a person out there who might be sitting in their spiral, right? They're doing all the things, they're hitting all the
Mhm,
walls, and they're
mhm.
wondering too if they are built, if they're also built for this. And
Was I built
what
for
would you
this?
want her to know, or
Yeah.
him, or
Yeah.
them?
I want that person to know that it's not easy. It does require a high level of resilience, and it requires creativity. So,
Mhm.
creativity means there's no one path to success. Your path is your path. And
That's
that
right.
is frankly all that matters. As long as you are happy with the path and the outcome that you're on, then that is all that matters. And obviously stay true to the vision and to the why, but the why should drive you to do it in a way that feels whole and right to you and intentional to you. So a lot of people say push through. I don't say push through. I say listen to yourself.
Listen to
listen
yourself,
to
please.
listen to what your intuition is telling you and adjust.
Yeah.
And that's
Sometimes
okay.
we have to be still to be able
Hmm.
to hear it, right? Because
Hmm.
there's so much going on,
So
right?
much noise.
So much noise, and you sometimes just have to be still. What is just like you if you feel called to do it, what are you being called to do? You don't necessarily need to shrink. Sometimes you might need to subtract, you might need to pivot, but like you said, your
Exactly.
path is your path, and that's enough. Trust the
Hmm.
journey,
Hmm.
but
Exactly.
also know when you're I love the are you being irrational? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Candace, but I also believe like we have to trust ourselves more than we have to ask 15,000 people. I mean, it's nice to have people to
Yes.
tap into. I truly believe that I learned so much from other people. But when we're
Hmm.
asking other people they give us a perspective. Now it's up for us to what we're going to do with that narrative. Like, what are we now going to do with that information? But you have
Hmm.
to trust yourself.
Yeah, no one else can pick the path for you. And I think to your point, you can and I prefer to get multiple
Mhm.
pieces of information, multiple
Yes,
perspectives because there's inevitably something that you did not think about
that's
or that
right.
you couldn't see for being so deep in the weeds. But then there's an opportunity to have space between those perspectives and what you ultimately do and then take the space to determine what's right for you because you're
Right,
literally the only one who can determine that and then go forward and then some people won't understand why you
right.
chose the path that you chose and you just have to be okay with it's the right one for me.
Yes, and yeah, sometimes people will think you are crazy, and you have to let them.
And
Let
you
them
have to
think
let them.
what they think while you keep going. Because at the end of the day, it's your life to live, and you're going to have to live with the
One.
consequences. You only get one, right? Like, what are
Only
you going
get
to do
one.
with this one precious life that you have?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as we think about that, you've created so many different ripple effects in everything you've done. So, whether where you were in corporate or your journey, just your impact. What do you want your legacy to feel like for you, for
Yeah.
the people that's coming, the women that are coming behind you, the people that are coming behind you, the communities that you're
Mm-hmm.
serving?
Yeah. Well, I've learned again in taking a step away from kind of the corporate life, I've learned to be really intentional about this and like my
Mhm.
filter, if you will, for the things that I do is it intentional, right? Does it
Right.
tie to my vision? And does it have impact for others? And so for me, I just I'm becoming the her
Right.
that is known for being practical yet transformational and
Mhm.
that is what I want. And so when that applies to wellness, there's a practical yet transformational solution for everyone. When it comes to the wealth gap, there is a practical yet transformational solution for everyone. Even when it comes to entrepreneurship, there is a practical yet transformational solution for everyone. And so the thread of my work and my vision is to impact people in a way that you're like, duh, I should have known to do that. That was
Mhm.
very rational and practical. Yet I can take these steps and have a completely different outcome than I otherwise would have had, and kind of create these pathways that otherwise would not have been open to me. And that is what I want to be known for.
I love that because I mean we I love that you're saying and sharing your journey. So you're becoming the her. You're becoming
Mm-hmm.
the her.
Mm-hmm.
Practical yet transformational. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the why, that's the work, that's the,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things packaged all in one. And you're showing us in real life that this is bigger than sometimes I know for many years you're chasing titles, but We're no longer becoming someone else's version of success. We need
Mhm.
people who are building lives and businesses who reflect who they are, and you're
Mhm.
doing that in real time.
Mhm.
And you're honoring that and showing us the path. So thank you for what you built, but also for who you're becoming, because you're also doing it out loud. And
Yeah,
I'm not a lot of people, that takes a lot of courage as well to do it out loud.
it does not all work.
So as we close, Candice, I like to, go a little deeper, and I like to ask the guests about their unleashed moment. And it's basically, what's one lesson or truth that you had to unleash in
Mhm.
order to step into, your abundance, in order to live
Mhm.
fully unleashed on your
Mhm.
purpose.
Mhm.
What's that for you?
Yeah, I said it with some undertone, kind of across the conversation, but I think my biggest transformation personally was not needing validation. Like I just don't let go of the need for validation for other people, from other people. And so I am self-validating now.
Wow, I love that, and
Yeah.
I received that and appreciate that you've shared so much of your journey with us and showing us what it means to just not to lead with purpose. You've pivoted with courage, and you've put community and people at the center without needing validation, which I love.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yes.
listen. If you hear me say
Yes.
self-validating, you,
Yes.
I'll give you
Yeah.
the
There you
credit. But I
go.
thank you for showing us what this looks like in real time. And yes, you are practical and transformative, and you're also unleashed.
Mhm.
And I thank you. Just, in your story, I mean, just for you to be able to go from Wall Street or corporate and finance to wellness, you have really given us the blueprint for what it is to live boldly, to build legacy, and reclaim the right to thrive. We have permission. It is our birthright.
And
So
you can
listen.
do it.
Oh, go ahead
And no, I
and
just
say
said,
it
and you
again.
can do it. It is possible.
Yeah,
You can do it. Yeah, it is absolutely
that's
possible.
right. You can do it. So you heard it from Candice Bradley herself. So if people want to connect with you or they want
Yes.
to know how to follow you, where can they reach you?
Yes. So I am on LinkedIn, Candice D. Bradley. And for Seneca Village Ventures, you can find us at RSVV or SV Ventures.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And listen, if you're listening and this episode moved you, I told you we are going to drop some gems. I promised you we were, and we delivered. Tag us in the conversation, leave a review, and share this with someone else that might need the overflow of the wisdom that Candace shared with us today. So until next time, stay grounded, stay growing, stay unleashed, and remember, the best is yet to come. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Unleashed Life. I hope today's episode has inspired you to break free from financial constraints and societal expectations, cultivating a mindset of abundance and possibility. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and join our vibrant online community to share your own unleashed moments and connect with like-minded individuals. Until next time, keep breaking barriers, embrace your beautiful, authentic self, and live life unleashed.